don't know how many years ago, it might have been when you ran for state superintendent.
Oh, yeah, that was before.
So about, was that about, yeah, quite a while ago. She's from the middle of the state, so we don't see her up here very often, but I got a chance to meet her back then and was very impressed, and ever since then I've always been a supporter, because I know in her heart she's a strong conservative, and she loves the people, and she's talented, and has the capabilities to do everything that we need to get done. And she's got the backbone to stand up to the governor if the need be too. So that's why I'm in support of her. So yeah, Dorothy Moon coming up.
Thank you.
So
let's try it without it. Can you hear me all right? I was a teacher, so I've got that booming voice. So Dorothy Moon, District 8, and I represent currently Lumhi County, so I'm up against Montana, Custer County, Boise County, Gem County, Valley County. So I almost go to Oregon. There's a little sliver that I don't cover. So it's 16,000 square miles, so all my people are very spread out. They're very independent, and they want their freedoms and liberties protected at all costs. So that's what I've been doing for the past 5 years. This is my 3rd term representing District 8. I will complete my last year this coming session, and in November, after the general, and should I prevail, which I hope I do, if I'm so honored, I will become Secretary of State, and then I vacate my seat at the end of November, and someone else takes over. I have already got people in place, good conservatives to take my place, because when you have Priscilla Giddings and me going out of the House, it's going to be a little bit of a blow, but if we can keep good people in, that's what really matters. The position of Secretary of State, I got very interested in when our election, first of all, was moved in the primary 2 years ago. So the primary, we had the election moved by the governor and the attorney general from May 19th, if you remember, to June 2nd. That's when we would end it. Well, it wasn't his prerogative to do that. Right. Only the legislature can move an election. So if he really wanted to do it, and if I was Secretary of the State at the time, I would have said, I'm sorry, sir. If you can get the legislature in to consider moving the election day, good luck, because I would not think they would want that to happen. The thing is, once you get out of session in March, especially with COVID going on and a lot of people upset, now they're essential or non-essential, now they're at home, their dogs can't get groomed, you can't get into a hairstylist, you can't go out and eat, everything is going crazy. I think we just need to have a little normalcy, especially with the election, and have it on the date of May 19th. And we weren't given that. In fact, I had heard that they actually wanted to move it off until August. And I said, and none of the legislators wanted to move to August either. So that was bad, and nothing happened. He should have been challenged in court for that. But you've got to remember, we have a Supreme Court who's already done a lot of things where you think they would have sided with the people, like on grocery sales tax exemption, and they did not. And that was a blatant, obvious, the governor missed the date. If he doesn't sign it and it's sitting on his desk, and he doesn't veto by that time, it automatically becomes law. So just as an example, we would have had grocery sales tax exemption had our I'm going to get it just a little bit higher so I can look back in the back. If we had the grocery sales tax exemption, if our Secretary of State said, I am not going to certify what Otter wants me to do, I'm going to certify it that it went through, that both chambers passed it, he missed the veto date, and now we have grocery sales tax exemption. But our Secretary of State didn't do that. He should have. So that was kind of like the beginning of the end, when you start seeing people not really doing their job. So I went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court did rule in favor of, yes, you're right, he did miss the date to veto, and it should be law. But they said, but we're going to let it stand because, we'll give him a pass. We don't give a pass. We follow the law. So anyway, the Secretary of State, I've seen some wonky things happen. And I think that's obvious that we need to address every part of that position, but certifying a vote and certifying to make it a law should have been done in that case. So anyway, moving forward, okay, back to the elections issue. So here we have the movement of the date, and then we get down to the general election where President Trump lost as president. All of us know whenever we've watched elections at home at night and it gets to, 3 in the morning and yay, Trump won the first go, when he came in the first time, how excited, and I'm sitting there with my son and my husband, we watched it all night long. But we all knew in our heart there was something really wrong when all of these battleground states shut down at 11 o'clock. Oh, we're going to come back in the morning because we have so much to deal with. Yeah, you have a lot to deal with. You're going to finagle things to where you get who you want. So that issue alone created a lot of angst in my district and around the state. In fact, all of us, you can talk to Heather, you can talk to your legislators up here. We've never received more emails and phone calls as we had than the fact that that happened. Because if you can't trust the elections, we've lost our republic. That's it. We're done. That's number one. That's why this issue is so important to me, based on everything I've heard from my folks. Well, so then we had the Texas lawsuit come up. Texas lawsuit comes up. No one's signing on to it. The governor's getting just as many phone calls as all of the legislators are receiving. But nothing's happening. So time goes by. Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeehan, she says, well, we've got to at least file an amicus brief, because by now you cannot enjoin the Texas lawsuit anymore. The last state was Missouri, number 18. So now all we can do is be cheerleaders on the side and say, go Texas, go. And all you other states that signed on, go, go, go. So now an amicus brief isn't really anything but a show of support. Well, Janice McGeehan got an amicus brief taken care of without any taxpayer money. This was all from Arizona. Attorneys worked on it that have been watching their election fraud situation. And then 40 of us signed on to it. And of course I signed on to it. A lot of the good legislators have signed on to it. Well, we get it filed on a Thursday. And that night, the governor comes out, Lieutenant Governor McGeehan just trumped me. Okay, so she's got her amicus brief in. She's got support. Her name is on the filings with the Supreme Court, because my sister from Kansas City, my oldest one, that's my younger one, anyway, called me up and said, Dorothy, I just saw your name in this Supreme Court filing. I said, yeah, Debbie, I really am a legislator. I really do, because no one knows what I do. Anyway, so it was important what Janice did. But the governor said he was going to file an amicus brief with no intention of really doing it. And that's what made me mad. It was all theater. And his handlers are very good at making sure the message is, gosh darn, I wish I got that amicus brief, but they threw it out so fast. The Supreme Court did. Anyway, so I got mad. I got mad because it isn't right. I'm a real right and wrong person. And when I see something wrong, it just gets my hair up on the back of my neck. So I started going around talking. I started in December, and I ended up, it is probably March when I was doing 3 talks a week. I went over to St. Anthony with Representative Carrie Hanks and Rigby and more. I would try to do 3 every weekend. I went to Council and to Cascade and to Caldwell. That was my 3C weekend. And I would do all these talks telling them that what is happening in this state is wrong. Our executive branch is not standing up for the people of Idaho at all. At all. And it's worrisome when everybody else knows it's wrong and we need to be jumping on the bandwagon, because this state came out for Trump at 65%. The highest in the country. We were his #1 fans, and we've let him down. Because he sure didn't let us down. Because he was our crusader, he was our fighter. And then everybody got complacent, and that's exactly what happened. We should have had our guard up. We should have known they were going to do something to take him out. It was obvious. I'm just glad it wasn't a bullet. I'm glad at least he's still around. So after I went around talking to all these people, of course, it was just confirming what they already knew. Things are bad. They're very bad. So in taking that information, I wasn't even thinking about running for Secretary of State until I saw who threw in for it. And when I saw who threw in for it, I thought, I can't vote for any of them. None of them are conservative. None of them are fighters. And I've got a proven record of being a fighter and being a conservative. You can look at my record. And I know some people, they're trying to demean the Idaho Freedom Foundation, but I've known Wayne Hoffman for over 25 years, when he was with South Idaho Press down in Burley, Idaho. And Wayne Hoffman has always been a true conservative and very concerned about the direction the state was going. So this think tank does. It rates bills and it rates us as legislators in our performance. I've always been in the 90s. I think one year I was real close to 88 or something like that. I don't even remember what the issues were, but I've always been in the 90s. I was 98 this past year. So the American Conservative Union also ranks us. Vote.org also tells you, oh yeah, conservative, far right nut, or whatever they say. Woo! They just done that. Anyway, and I can't remember what they say. But anyway, they say all kinds of things like that. But you know that I'm a conservative. And a lot of people can't prove they're a conservative. And don't believe them if they tell you they say they're conservative. In fact, I tell people, don't believe me. I mean, I sound as honest as the day is long, but don't believe me. You go check it out. You go look at these, Idaho Freedom Foundation, you go look at the American Conservative Union, but most importantly, go look at the Idaho legislative website. And if you open up bills, so let's say you're really interested in educational savings accounts, or you're really interested in anti-abortion bills, or your agriculture and the hemp agriculture bill. So if you're really interested in certain things, you can go in there and type agriculture, all the ag bills come up, and if there's something, ooh, I wonder about that, and you click on it, and you can see exactly how we all voted, House and Senate. If there's no senators' names on it, that means they stuck it in the drawer. And there's a lot of bills that are in that list that only have House members on it and no senators. Very important. So anyway, after talking with everybody, and it was actually when the candidates started announcing, and Senator Cliff Bear was considering running, and he's a good conservative, but he also works for Russ Polcher and in his, CD1 office. And he was considerate for, I think, about 3 months, and then he backed out, and we had some issues in my family, some medical issues in a family member, and so I didn't do anything. And I thought, geez, I was conflicted. When you sleep next to your husband every night, and they know you're tossing and turning, because I was really contemplating that I need to do this. I know I needed to do this. Well, I was up in Boise on October 30th. So now I've been out talking. I call it my rampage tour. So I was out rampaging and going after the swamp and saying how our constitutional rights are being stripped away from us every day. You can't get in for a court case. I mean, you're being arrested if you put a mask on and trying to get in. You're held in contempt of court. There's no speedy trials at all. You can't pray. You can't do this. You can't do that. It is amazing, and people weren't saying anything. It was amazing how the sheep lined up. It was very scary. And then you wonder, why are we doing this? Because we have to. I've got 2 sons. Hopefully someday I'll have some grandkids. Like my sissy does. Anyway, she's got a grandson, but someday I want a grandkid. Anyway, so I went ahead and announced on November 2nd, after I heard on October 30th on my way back from Boise that Phil McGrain, the Ada County Clerk, was going to mask up the poll watchers and the election workers. That's another right being stripped away. Telling someone that they have to do something where they're in there as a capacity, either representing a candidate by being our eyes and ears and watching, a ballot being kicked out of a tabulator, or somebody throws a ballot on the ground and you're wondering whether you're like hiding a card or something, and you're standing in the corner and the clerk tells you to stay there. That's not right. So anyway, after listening to this thing about the masks, I went home and I said, Dar, I've got to run. I said, this is it. Straw that broke the camel's back. I had been encouraged for probably a good month and a half. Dorothy, you have to jump in. We don't have a conservative running. And I think a lot of us knew that. And at that moment, I found a treasurer. I said, I'm doing it. It was kind of like my legislative run, same thing. I had no intention of running, and I was told I need to run. And Dar, I need a website. I've just been told I need to run for office. And it was a very defining moment for me. There was a very defining moment for Carrie Hanks. There was a very defining moment for Christy Zitto, because we all sat around and said, why did you decide to run? Because we were all told we have to run. Because right now we're in some really critical times. And I guess they wanted some crazy women to get in there and start fighting. So anyway, so then after I got a treasurer, I announced on November 2nd, Election Day. And then I also went on the radio stations announcing that I was running. I put out a press release. And then the other thing I did is I shot a video. And the video, I had an actual videographer, because I had heard about election, well, no, I didn't shoot the video yet, I'm sorry, let me back up. What I did on the 3rd was I shot a video to post saying, if you saw anything, an irregularity or a glitch or an abnormality, something during an election that you know was inappropriate, reach out to me. So I had well over a dozen within the first day. And not just in Ada County, they were everywhere. I'm going, oh my gosh, this is worse than I thought. So the first, there are a couple of them, and the ones that you can verify, so that you don't say, oh boy, Moon was telling me all kinds of crazy stuff. Well, the first one that you can verify is in Teton County, that they tabulated the ballots. They gave out the results. Here's all the winners. Everybody's happy, high-fiving, gonna go have a celebratory dinner. And then they find out the next morning that the clerk and their staff went in to start cleaning up and boxing things up, and they realized that the absentee ballots were not tabulated with the rest. So what happened? It flipped 2 of the races. So now here you thought you won, now you didn't win. That's just unacceptable. That's lazy. That's wrong. And again, if we were having elections every week, okay, it is monotonous, we're having elections every week, but we do not have elections every week. They are unique events. You should be ready for it. Okay, that was one bad one. And that one you can Google Teton County November 2nd election results. And then you can read about it, because it happened. The other one that happened was this Michael Hahn was running for Meridian City Council. It's already all over the news. It may not be here, but it's definitely down in Boise area. So he's running for election, and he's neck and neck. Results are coming in, he's kind of ahead, just by a couple of votes. Then all of a sudden the absentee ballots come in. Boom, loses by 56, which is pretty narrow margin. So he loses by 56 votes. And he's thinking, this can't be right. Well, they go to bed, they're tired, they've been up late watching the count. And then the clerk talks to him a couple days later and says, Mike, I've got to talk to you. We have a problem. We didn't randomize your absentee ballots. He said, what do you mean? He goes, randomization is where if there's more than one candidate, sometimes there's 1, 2, 3, 5. Anyway, what they do is that they rotate the names. So if there's 3 candidates, 33 1/3% of the time you're going to be in first position, second position, and third position. Then they rotate them. And he mailed out 2,000 ballots where no randomization was used, meaning that the guy or gal, don't even know, whoever was up on the top, statistically, they have an advantage, because if you go in and you don't know any of these candidates, you check the first one. And that happens. So he was upset about it. He said, well, I don't know what to do. And the clerk goes, I don't either. So he goes, I'm going to write the Secretary of State, I'm going to write the Attorney General, and I'm going to get an opinion. We're going to see how to fix this. So the Attorney General sent it back to the clerk and said, you deal with it. Secretary of State, back to the clerk. A letter, and I saw the letter that went to the clerk, but I just saw, Mike Hahn told me about the letters that he saw in response. And the one from the Secretary of State told the clerk, you deal with it. So the clerk didn't know how to deal with it. So instead of maybe saying, to remedy the situation, what we'll do is send out those 2,000 ballots again, let them know that we had an issue. You don't have to get into the weeds. Please take the time to vote. We'll give you 10 days to get them back in. But that wasn't even a consideration. But it's an option. At least it's something. So instead, he said, go get an attorney. It'll probably cost you about $6,000 to get started in suing us. Well, he's not going to do that. He just spent a bunch of money, a lot of his own personal money, to run for city council. He was a good conservative. So now he will always know, he thinks in his mind, he's been cheated. So it was not a level playing field, because everybody else, we think, had randomized ballots. I'm now hearing other counties, they did not randomize some of the ballots. Because I've been out talking, campaigning, and then people come up to me, well, you're not going to believe this. I was like, no, I do, but it's too bad. I can't believe so much of this is going on. So anyway, what I'm going to start doing is posting videos. So this one, I have a 10-minute video with Michael Hahn. He came over to my house that I rent while I'm in session, but I've rented it for a little bit of time so I can kind of spring out of there when I'm campaigning. But he came over, I had a videographer, I interviewed him, because that way you hear firsthand Not just, hey, Moon said, no, this is what this guy says. And then you make your own judgment. I will be talking to some people in Teton County about that election. I will post it. Make your own decision. I will post the story about people who were standing in line, told by the clerk to go home and come back because they had a little bit of an issue in the office with one of the machines. I don't know what it was. I've already talked to that clerk, and I will be meeting with him on my way home, before Christmas. So anyway, I'm doing my due diligence. I'm going to do as much research as I can into all of these different issues, and then we need to decide how we're going to fix them all. So someone asked me, well, do you expect the legislature to come in and fix all these issues? Well, they won't be able to. Why don't we look at the laws that we already have and see which ones are not being followed? Another example, too, is that when I was running for a race, I know that my opposition had a plane. They had a banner. That plane was buzzing around every weekend all over the district, which is huge. Never any light kind turned in. Never any gas, plane fuel. Nothing was ever turned in. And I went to the Secretary of State's office. I said, somebody's not turning in all of the donations that are being made to pay for fuel for a plane. And I'd kind of like know who they are. He said, I just don't have time for that. It's important. Because then it's not a level playing field, because I will guarantee you if I got in a plane and I had a banner hanging off of the back end of it, the banner was paid for and none of the fuel or the pilot was being put down anywhere, they would get me. So that's not a level playing field. I think it needs to be. And I don't even think this position is actually partisan. It should be nonpartisan. You would think the Democrats, and I know most of us think the Democrats are behind all the shenanigans. No, it's not. A lot of the shenanigans are behind our own Republican Party. Yeah. So the fact of the matter is, this should be a position where everybody knows when they put their hat in a ring for a race, that it's going to be fair. And there are people, when they're in those polls, watching the tabulation or watching things being kicked back or where they stack things, that it's going to be fair and they're going to be treated with respect. Because right now, a lot of those poll watchers aren't treated with respect. Do you really think a clerk who's conducting an election wants people watching them? I'll guarantee you they don't. So, they need to. So we need to train them. You will have poll watchers. Your election workers will be trained to know exactly what to look for with fraud. If there is an ID and if it's even the least bit wonky, you need to pull it out. Call the sheriff over. We're not going to let people just come and vote in our elections willy-nilly. So anyway, those are the kind of things I see that we need to have done. And that's just in the elections part. So the other part that the other part of the job of the Secretary of State is to deal with business filings. So if you want to incorporate, an S Corp or a full corporation, LLC, whatever, it all goes through the state. And that way it's there and people can check on the businesses. If you want to become a notary, you have to go through the Secretary of State. Wills and trusts, they can go through the Secretary of State so that somewhere it's like a repository for that type of information. That's pretty easy, pretty cut and dry. The third part of the job is the lands board. And that's a part that you really don't hear a lot about. But it's very important for rural Idaho or anybody who lives in a forest. So the land board is given so much in endowment lands, which has been sectioned off when we went from territory to state, and that was supposed to be used for schools. And it is. So some have been traded over time, but we always have the same amount of land that we can grow trees, harvest them, and every logging truck you see drive down the road, that's going to educate so many students. So let's try to get the best return out of it we can. Granted, timber prices may vary, but right now when a lot of our timber is coming from, and our lumber is coming from Canada, we have a real problem because we have a lot of lumber here trees to harvest to produce lumber, which has been out of this roof as far as prices go. So it's a good time to have a lumber mill right now is what I'm trying to say. So the land board deals with those, lands to get the highest return. And the other things that they can be dealing with are the lands that adjoin, like U.S. forest lands, to do the Good Neighbor Authority. Thank you so much. Don't ask me what's going on there. I guess it's just a little dry in winter. Excuse me if I get throwing it on everybody. I'm good about that. Anyway, as far as the lands go, on the Forest Service, there's Good Neighbor Authority. And if you've heard of Good Neighbor Authority, that's where we as a state go in and we survey some of the forested area. And we survey, thank you, a forested area. We cruise it. Our state foresters do. They determine if it's lodgepole posts and poles or whatever they're going to try to market off of it, and then they put it up for auction. When this program initially came out, so the Forest Service was working with the State Department of Lands, which we have a director who runs that, we were getting some of that money in the counties where the wood was harvested. Recently, that's changed. So to me, being on the land board, I would say we need to get the Forest Service in here and renegotiate that, because we should have the money if we're doing all the work. I feel very strongly about that. We don't do fuels reduction and timber harvesting unless our rural counties are already suffering and get the money. And that's just going to help with taxes overall. So I can see a lot of areas where all of the resources we have in this state, if they're managed properly, can really help the citizens of the state. We shouldn't be getting levies and bonds. We should have enough money from our cobalt in salmon, the gold in salmon and Custer, the molybdenum in Custer, the gold in Valley County. There's enough resources here, and when a mining company comes into an area, so instead of holding them back by making it almost a 15, 20-year process to permit, we make it a 2 to 3 year process to permit. Those are $35 and $45 jobs. When a mining company comes in, they anticipate hiring a bunch of people. They're not going to do a little bitty mine about the size of this room. They're going to do a massive mine. And they're going to hire people. They're going to need lodging. They're going to help pay for expanding sewer, expanding water, building a middle school, just like the Thompson Creek molybdenum mine did in Chalice, Idaho. Big sewer lagoon, it's nice. So that's what mining companies do. They help communities and they pick up the tab. Most of them are out of country. They're Canadians. The Australian mine, the cobalt is owned by Jervois out of Melbourne. There's Italians. We have international groups running all of our mines. Shouldn't be that way. We should be doing it. So, America first always has been my thought, but you know what? America first would get those jobs going if other people can actually get the permitting done, since Americans seem to have a harder time getting it through. And that's part of, I think, the land board, and I bring a lot to that. I've got a master's in resource planning. I got that after my education for teaching. So I was teaching all the sciences, chemistry and physics, life and earth science. I was a special ed director, and also elementary ed. I could teach all those. But then my master's, I got in resource planning because I thought, maybe I didn't want to stay in education my whole life, and that's what I did. But I think that is really applicable to that part of the job, the land board. Right now, when you have the governor, he's a rancher, I hear. I don't know. He's got some horses and some cows. Okay, and then we have the Attorney General. We have the Superintendent of Public Instruction. We have the State Controller, and then me. I think it's very important I sit on that board. So it's not just elections. So the elections is the most important issue. The elections, I definitely see a path on how to fix it. It's not hard. We just have to be diligent in that, getting to every single county, educating people on what they need to do. But the most important is keep it uniform, that the process is uniform. And based on election law, if you look at Idaho election law, it says the Secretary of State must have uniformity in elections. So that says to me, we're all either paper and hand count, or we're paper and tabulating with machines everybody likes, or we're iPads. I'm just saying, we all need to be doing the same thing, because then when you guys move from Kootenai County or wherever you're from and you move down to Custer County, it's the same. It's like you just woke up in a different election office, but everything is familiar. Because if it's not familiar, you would definitely notice if there's an impropriety. So I think it's very important. Anyway, so that pretty much sums up why I'm running for Secretary of State, and I will take questions from anybody.